The morning after my father's funeral, the house felt hollow. The polished hardwood floors didn't creak the way they used to when he was around. His slippers still sat by the fireplace, untouched, like they were waiting for him to come home. And yet, the silence screamed louder than any storm. I had spent the past 5 years balancing between hospital visits and company boardrooms, pushing through every obstacle with one singular purpose: to carry on my father's legacy. But nothing prepared me for what my mother said to me that morning. "You don't need to stay here anymore," Margot announced, her voice clipped and emotionless, like she was checking something off a to-do list. "Your father's gone. I've inherited everything. You're not needed." I didn't respond right away. I just looked at her, at the woman who had always felt like a stranger under the same roof. Her expression was flat, unreadable. No grief, no warmth, just finality. I had once wished, foolishly, that her coldness was a mask, that someday she'd reveal a softer layer beneath. But now I realized that layer never existed. "Okay," I said finally. My voice didn't crack. My posture didn't slump. I simply turned, walked upstairs, and began packing. By noon, my childhood room was empty, save for a single framed photo of me and my father standing in front of the Whitmore Restoration and Architecture sign, the company he built from scratch in Charleston's historic district. I slid it into my bag last. As I left, I didn't cry. The tears would come later, when no one could see them. I stayed with a friend that night, unable to face the echo of memories in that house any longer. My phone buzzed occasionally, condolences from colleagues, former classmates, even some of the board members, but not a word from her. Not even to ask if I made it out safely. And yet, none of it surprised me. Margot Whitmore had always been a woman more interested in appearances than connections. She knew how to smile in public, how to dominate a room with charm and confidence. But behind closed doors, she was as distant as the moon. My father once called her elegant, but I often wondered if he mistook elegance for emptiness. When I was little, she would promise to take me to the park, only to cancel last minute because of a luncheon or charity gala. When I won regional science fairs, she clapped politely, but never once asked what my project was about. Meanwhile, my father, Gregory Whitmore, would come home from 14-hour days at the firm, loosen his tie, and say, "What's our mission today, kiddo?" He made time, even when he had none. He made me feel like I mattered. He also made me curious. I'd sit with him in his study, watching blueprints come to life beneath his pencil strokes. While other girls were learning to braid their hair, I was learning to read elevation plans and material specs. My fascination with his work wasn't about ambition, it was about connection. I wanted to understand the language he spoke so fluently, the world he created with his hands. In my early 20s, I started shadowing him more seriously. What began as quiet observations turned into real responsibilities: client meetings, contractor negotiations, historical commission reviews. He taught me everything with a calm patience that only deepened our bond. But the more I grew into his world, the more the distance between me and my mother expanded. I remember the day I told them I wanted to join the firm after college. We were having dinner, grilled salmon, Margot's favorite, though she barely touched hers. "I've been thinking," I said, nervously twisting my napkin. "I want to work at Whitmore Restoration. I've been preparing. I want to follow your path." My father smiled, instantly warm, proud, but before he could respond, Margot laughed. Not cruelly, just dismissively. "Another one of your little phases, Lena." "It's not a phase," I said firmly. "This is what I want." She sighed, long and dramatic. "Darling, women in hard hats aren't exactly charming. Why not find a nice husband who can build something for you instead?" I stared at her, stunned. Not because she disagreed with me, but because she didn't even try to understand. It was like explaining architecture to someone who'd never walked through a building. There was a wall between us, when I no longer had the energy to scale. "I'll do it anyway," I said quietly. My father placed his hand over mine beneath the table. That one gesture meant more than 1,000 arguments. After graduation, I joined the firm officially. The work was hard. Preserving Charleston's heritage came with legal red tape, stubborn stakeholders, and endless nights hunched over zoning maps. But I loved it. And more importantly, I loved doing it with him. Every project became a new lesson, every mistake a shared learning. We weren't just father and daughter, we were partners. Then came the diagnosis. It was a Wednesday. He collapsed in the office lobby, just a few feet from the model of our latest restoration, a 19th century church turned into a community center. Stage 4 cancer. They didn't sugarcoat it. Neither did he. "We've got work to do," he said that night, lying in his hospital bed, tubes snaking out of him. "Not just at the firm. Here." He tapped my forehead, and so began our final chapter. 6 months turned into 5 years. I ran the business during the day, stayed by his side most nights. Margot would appear occasionally, dropping off fresh shirts or homemade soup that he rarely touched. She'd ask about his condition in clinical terms, never emotional ones. It was as if she had outsourced her feelings. Once, I caught her staring at him while he slept. Her face was unreadable, somewhere between detachment and fear. And I realized then that she didn't know how to grieve someone she'd never truly known. The day he died, I was holding his hand. His last words to me were simple, but they carved a space in my soul I didn't know existed. "You are everything I hoped for. Don't let them undo what we built." I whispered back, "I won't." But I didn't expect the undoing to begin so soon, nor that it would come from the one person I still called family. The funeral was quiet, dignified. His colleagues spoke, the mayor sent flowers, and our longest tenured employee cried during his eulogy. I handled the logistics, venue, catering, obituary, legal forms. Margot handled nothing, which is why, when she told me I was no longer needed, that she had everything now, I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I just walked away. What she didn't know, what she could never imagine, was that my father had planned for this moment too. He always said, "Good architecture anticipates pressure points before the structure breaks." Turns out, so did his will. My father didn't just leave me a company. He left me a plan. A structure so precise, so deliberate, that even in death he was still 10 steps ahead of everyone else, especially Margot. 3 months before he passed, we sat together in his study one last time. His hand trembled slightly as he slid a sealed envelope across the table. "If she turns on you," he said, his voice hoarse but steady, "use this. Only then." Inside was a USB drive and a short letter written in his unmistakable handwriting. "Margot doesn't understand the value of things she didn't build herself. She may never, but you do. You always have. I'm trusting you to protect what's worth keeping, even if that means protecting it from her." At the time, I didn't know what the video contained. I didn't ask. I just tucked the envelope away in the safe and prayed I'd never need it. But less than a week after she pushed me out of the house, my phone rang. The name on the screen made my stomach clench. "Lena," she snapped, her voice tight with frustration, "where is my money?" "Excuse me." "My share. From the estate. You think I wouldn't notice? You took everything. I get a letter from the lawyer saying you have full control. What kind of joke is this?" "It's not a joke, Margot," I said, keeping my tone even. "It's what he wanted. You think you're so clever, don't you? So noble. Your father loved this family. He would never—" "He did," I said, cutting in gently. "And that's why he made sure his legacy wouldn't be squandered." The line went dead. I waited, phone still in hand, until it buzzed again with a single message. "Come to the house." Now, I debated not going. I told myself she didn't deserve an explanation. But something in me, a thread of unfinished grief, maybe pulled me back. I arrived just after sunset. The old Whitmore house loomed in the warm Charleston dusk, its shutters casting long shadows across the porch. I stepped inside without knocking. The lights were dim, the air stale with tension. She was waiting in the sitting room, arms crossed, face flushed with fury. You stole my life, she spat. I protected his, I replied calmly. You always were his favorite, always the good little shadow. You fooled him into thinking you cared more. I didn't have to fool him. He saw me. That's when she lost control. Her words came like shrapnel, fast and sharp. You're selfish, manipulative. I gave up everything for this family. For you. And this is how I'm repaid. I didn't flinch. Instead, I pulled the USB from my coat pocket and held it out. What's this? She asked, her voice dropping an octave. His final message. For you. She stared at it like it was a live wire. Then, reluctantly, she took it. I assume you don't know how to play it, I said. Dry. Tired. She didn't answer, but her silence was confirmation enough. I set my laptop on the coffee table, inserted the drive, and clicked the file. The screen lit up, and there he was, Gregory Whitmore, looking healthier than I remembered, filmed in soft office light. My heart clenched. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I'll give you privacy, I said, stepping into the hallway. I stood there, hands trembling, eyes fixed on the wall. I could hear nothing but the low hum of the video, the occasional gasp from Margot, the muffled sound of a tissue being pulled from a box. Minutes passed, then silence. When I returned, she was sitting still, eyes red, cheeks wet. She didn't look at me. Are you okay? I asked quietly. She nodded. Barely. I understand now, she whispered. I'll honor what he said. From now on. Everything is in your hands. I nodded. There was nothing else to say. That night, as I drove home, her voice echoed in my mind. Not the harsh words from earlier, but the quiet ones at the end. There had been something else in her tone. Not just remorse. Something deeper. Wounded. Human. Weeks passed. No calls. No messages. I tried to let it go, to focus on work. But one afternoon, during a break between meetings, a strange feeling pulled at me. I drove to the old house just to check. No answer. The curtains were drawn. Lights off. I returned that evening. This time the porch light was on. She opened the door slowly, surprised. Sorry for showing up unannounced, I said. I came by earlier. Got worried. I was at work, she replied, brushing off the concern like it was dust. At work. I repeated. You mean? I have a part-time job. At the cafe down on King Street. Just mornings for now. I stared at her. Margot Whitmore. Charleston's former socialite. Once allergic to anything resembling labor. Now wearing a faded sweater and jeans. Hands slightly flour-dusted. How did that happen? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached into a drawer and pulled out the USB. You should watch it, she said. He left a message for you too. I didn't realize it until the end. It's personal. My hands trembled as I took the drive. Are you sure? She nodded. It's time. That night, I sat in my office, the one that used to belong to him. I closed the door, dimmed the lights, and opened the file. There he was again, smiling gently, eyes steady. My dear Lena, he began, if you're watching this, then your mother has seen her part, and it's time you see yours. I leaned in. First, thank you for everything, for carrying this weight with strength and grace, for honoring what we built. But there's something I never told you, something I always meant to, but the right moment never came. I stopped breathing. You're not Margot's biological daughter. You were born to her older sister, Madeline. She passed away shortly after you were born. I was devastated. She was the love of my life. The words hit me like a sudden wind. Before she died, she made me promise to keep you safe. I raised you as my own. And when I asked Margot to help, she did. Not perfectly, but she tried. I stared at the screen, motionless. Everything inside me twisted. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I didn't want you to feel like you didn't belong. Because you do. You always have. You are my daughter, Lena. In every way that matters. He paused, eyes glistening. And as for Margot, she gave up her life to raise someone else's child. I know it's not what she wanted, but she kept her promise. For that, I'll always be grateful. I closed the laptop, slowly, my mind unraveling. So much suddenly made sense. Her detachment, her coldness, her resentment, and yet also her presence. She had stayed, even if she'd never said the words. The next morning, I knocked on her door again. She answered in an apron, her hair pinned up, flour on her cheek. I watched the video, I said. She nodded, eyes downcast. So it's true, I continued. You raised me because he asked you to. Yes. Her voice was barely audible. Did you ever want to? She looked up, meeting my gaze. At first, no. But later, I didn't know how to stop. Silence stretched between us. Then I asked the question that had haunted me all night. What happened to my real mother? She took a long breath. Madeline died giving birth to you. Gregory never got over it. He couldn't raise you alone. So he asked me to step in. And I did. Why didn't you tell me? Because he begged me not to. He said you needed stability, not more loss. I stood there, stunned, the weight of her words slowly settling in. Then I remembered something. An old photo in her hallway of Margot smiling in a cafe apron, long before I was born. A dream, a life abandoned. You wanted to open a cafe, I said. She nodded. That was the plan, before everything changed. Well, I said quietly, maybe it's not too late. She didn't answer right away. She just looked at me, long and hard, as if seeing me for the first time not as a burden, or a promise she once made, but as a woman, a daughter. I'm too old to dream, she said softly. No, I replied. You're just old enough to do it right this time. That was the beginning. The first week was awkward. We talked in fragments, brief exchanges about equipment, flooring, permits. But somewhere between the spreadsheets and coffee bean samples, a fragile rhythm began to take shape. She showed me a hand-drawn sketch of a cafe she had once planned when she was 26. It was delicate, with curling vines and French windows. Café Magnolia, she had named it, after the tree she used to climb as a girl. It was supposed to be my escape, she whispered, a place where everything felt slower. Kinda. It still can be, I said. She looked doubtful. I haven't worked a full shift in decades. My knees hurt. I burn toast. I don't even know how to use a modern register. I smiled. Lucky for you. You raised someone who does. We worked side by side. Some days were good, filled with light banter and quiet cooperation. Others were harder. She would get frustrated at her own slowness, or withdraw suddenly during planning meetings. Once, she accidentally knocked over a bag of flour and sat down, defeated. I used to run charity galas for 300 people, she muttered bitterly. Now I can't even handle a sack of flour. I knelt beside her, brushed her hands clean, and said gently, those galas never asked anything real of you. This does. She looked at me then, eyes wet, but not from shame, from something older, softer. I never said it, she whispered. But I did try, Lena. I tried in the only way I knew. I nodded. And now you're learning a new way. She began waking up early, practicing her latte art, researching local suppliers. She even signed up for a short hospitality course online. Every evening, we would sit in the empty cafe space, still echoing with paint fumes and hope, and talk. Not just about the business, but about her sister, my real mother. She was wilder than me, Margot recalled one night, sipping mint tea. She sang off-key, danced in the kitchen. She once broke a vase and blamed it on the wind. Sounds like someone I would have loved. I smiled. She would have loved you more. The grand opening of Café Magnolia wasn't extravagant. No red carpet, no press release. Just friends, neighbors, and the quiet scent of baked goods spilling out onto the cobblestone street. Margot wore a navy apron embroidered with tiny white magnolias. She looked nervous but proud. When she rang up the first customer, her hands barely trembled. Later that evening, as we closed the register, she turned to me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not pride, not regret. Something in between. "This," she said, motioning to the cafe, "is the first thing I've ever done that was just mine. But I wouldn't have gotten here without you." I squeezed her hand. "Dad would be proud." She nodded. "But I think I'm finally proud of myself, too." Over the next few months, something unexpected happened. We started acting like family. Not the kind in greeting cards or old sitcoms. A real one. Messy. Imperfect. Tender in its own way. She insisted on paying for her own groceries with her cafe income, refusing to dip into the inheritance. "I need to know I can stand on my own 2 feet," she said, and I let her. But I kept a quiet watch, just in case. One afternoon, while restocking the pastry shelf, she turned to me and asked, "Do you still think of this house as yours?" I paused, not in the way I used to, but "I think it's home again." She smiled. "Then maybe we're both where we're supposed to be." Later that week, we visited the cemetery. The air was cool, the wind tugging gently at our coats. We brought 2 bouquets, one of roses for Gregory and one of soft white lilies for Madeline. We stood in silence for a while. Then Margot stepped forward. "I kept my promise," she whispered to Madeline's grave. "It wasn't always beautiful, but I did my best. And now she's more than fine. She's extraordinary." She turned to me, her eyes steady. "You don't have to call me Mom," she said, "but I'll always be yours if you want me." I didn't hesitate. "You've earned it, every syllable." She blinked fast, then pulled me into a hug, tentative at first, then fierce. As we walked back to the car, I felt lighter, like something that had weighed me down for years had finally been named, faced, and released. A few weeks later, we filed the paperwork. I was officially adopted, legally, symbolically, emotionally. It didn't change biology. It changed something deeper. Connection. Choice. A few nights after that, we sat in the cafe after closing time, sharing lemon bars and memories. "I always thought I was invisible to you," I confessed, "like a shadow you couldn't wait to step out from." She looked down, then up. "And I thought I was just a ghost in your life, a placeholder. But maybe we were both wrong." I smiled. Maybe we were just waiting to meet each other as we really are. She reached across the table, took my hand, and said, "I'll always be your mother." And I believed her, because now we weren't bound by blood or obligation. We were bound by something stronger: truth, forgiveness, and the quiet courage to begin again. In the end, my father left me more than a company. He left me a blueprint for love, layered, flawed, but resilient. He taught me that legacy isn't about what you leave behind. It's about who you lift while you're here. And Margot, she may not have known how to love me in the beginning, but she showed up in the end. And sometimes, that's the bravest thing a person can do. We visit my parents, both of them, every other Sunday now. We bring flowers, stories, and updates from Cafe Magnolia. We tell them about the new barista, the dog who sneaks in for croissants, and how, somehow, after everything, we became a family. Not because we had to, because we chose to.